that was something Scott and I agreed on early on, but he made it more of a policy than anything else. I think it's really, and he lived it 100%. And that is that in a community-based nonprofit, the most important person is the frontline. The most important person is the clinician, or the person who's, giving the bus ticket, not giving the bus ticket, but also riding with the person on the bus to the shelter or wherever they need to go. And the least important person is a person sitting at the desk, right?
Mm-hmm.
Doing the finances, the paperwork, or the outreach. It doesn't mean that the CFO and the CEO and the COO or the CIO aren't important. We take away the barriers and we provide the money and make sure the organization is running. We're in compliance with all the laws and all that good, happy stuff. But where the work actually gets done, where the impact really felt, is on the front line.
Yeah.
And so it's always been a premise to equip the front line of our organization with the tools like, mobile devices that work brilliantly, or laptops, or, AI instruments where they can do a scribble and it can turn the scribble into a sentence, so they're spending less time doing the writing of notes, things like that. Enabling the front force is really a key element for us. And so, therefore, the front line's most important, and the pyramid is upside down.
Welcome back to another episode here on the Hart Hustle Podcast with another great leader in Miss Ellen. Ellen, how you doing today, madam?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing phenomenal. Can't complain. It is Tuesday, but I really want to get started just straight into it. Like, you go in, you take $1 million liability with no safety net, and you truly turned a collapsing nonprofit into a $50 million mission, all while still navigating that loss, faith, and leadership. So I ask you, like, how did you get through it? Like, what is the mindset? What are the things you have to tell yourself? Who is the people in your corners to keep you just full of life to still keep leading?
Well, in the beginning, it was something that my husband and I did together. So that $1 million loss, the $800,000 loss, was something that he took on based on his mission in his life, and I was very aligned with it. So it was something that I had gone in to do a turnaround, and I took the $1 million to sit on the board that was remaining after we split the agencies apart. The next part of the journey was he took on that next step, and there was a lot of prayer between the two of us and an agreement that this was a mission for his life and mine together. And then he built a great deal with a great team at South Coast. The remaining people that stayed, there's still a couple employees that are with us that were there at the beginning as a board member, actually. So there's a lot of legacy here. When my husband passed, the board made me the CEO, which was a surprise to me. I really didn't think that was going to happen. And I'd been involved in the agency for years, over the 15, 16 years. So I had a lot of inside knowledge of the things that he was going through on a regular basis. So I had a working knowledge, and I'd also done projects with the organization. And so my mindset was always that the hustle was really the part of making money together with my husband and raising our son. At the same time, I had a consulting business on the side. I did an awful lot of work in the community and at my son's school. The heart part was always the mission of helping others, whether it was in this agency or in my community. I got that from my mom. She was always a big volunteer as I grew up, and I think it rubbed off, and a big part of my faith. And the faith part is really, when my husband died, it was really leaning in to all the scary stuff. Most people will tell you when you lose someone significant, at least 2 or 3 months where you're in a fog. And I had a great team and a wonderful board that really understood what was happening. And I just, honestly, you pray and cry every day. And then when you come out of the fog, you just keep working towards what you know to do the right thing. And he's really led us in a lot of amazing ways.
Of course, of course. I want to give kudos to your husband because you said your husband really played a major part in the organization that you still have so much passion, so much drive for. So kudos to him. And we talk about leaving a legacy. You were able to tell me he didn't just do a little bit. He did a lot. I
He did
mean,
it
they
all.
had to call him out of wherever he was at because he was that good. And I remember the story. How did that make you feel that at least you were able to create that legacy with him, that the longer you stay there till the day that me and you go, he has a lot to do with the growth of the
Oh,
organization.
absolutely. He was I mean, I took on a project for 8 weeks and split two
Mm,
agencies apart and turned one around. He took on the part of the agency that was going bankrupt and turned that around. So from
wow.
800,000 negative, 100 employees, 100 kids served, 5 million in revenue to, 30 million and making money and over 300 employees at that point. So, and over 5,000 kids served. So he did that on a point and a half of margin, he and the team. So that's a big deal when you're in a Medi-Cal business. He was a turnaround guy. He was an accounting guy. He understood numbers very well. Really good at budgeting. We have an amazing CFO that was hired, and they did that together really. Um, and that's a big part of, when he's in heaven. I'm sure he's enjoying uh, enjoying watching what's happening now. I'm sure he's
Yeah.
praying for us to make sure we continue and we don't screw it up.
What are some of those leadership skills that you learned from him? I mean, you guys are both great leaders, respectfully, but I can imagine as also a great couple, there's some things that you guys were able to learn from one another. What are some of those things you learned from him?
His strengths were very different than mine. So he was a really great finance and accounting guy, very computer savvy. So he did all of the technology planning. He really put a lot of the first parts of Zoom. He brought Zoom up right as the pandemic started. So he was very ahead of his time in nonprofit world to put all the technology chops in place. So our community-based folks were early enabled with mobile and laptops. We would give um, devices to clients, which is unheard of, right? People
Yeah,
that were in the gangs, we'd give them a laptop so they could talk to us whenever they needed to. That was like unheard of, but it really worked, and it really spread the word that we were there to really help. So those are important things that I learned a lot about how he looked at that community in a different way. Um, so he brought a lot of the operational technology and financial pieces. My, I
love
have
it.
an ops background too, but I'm probably much stronger in strategy and marketing and sales and just making it's sort of like at the right time. We both
Hmm.
have our own role, and I'm really into the data of the organization. How do you come through with operational metrics that matter to the market, matter to the funding stream? So I think he
I love it.
do all that, but I think those are sort of how we balanced our
Yeah, a
role.
great duo, a great duo. I want to take it back for a second. What does DARPA and manufacturing and a trip to Israel have to do with mental health leadership? Like, take us to that moment. You had to go through a lot before you get to who you are today, Ellen.
Yeah. A couple different questions there. So in my career, I was with electronics and manufacturing. So I was a VP at 35 with Ally Signal, running, a billion-dollar organization, different programs around the world. Um, Prior to that, I was in a small flexible circuitry and materials company that had won a vertical DARPA contract. DARPA is the defense research, deep research for the country.
Hmm.
And that first vertical was really the very first flip chip technology available because we had a very unique material called NovaCloud that we put forth to the market. And so a lot of my engineering and technology background um, helped me learn that there's an awful lot that can be done in teamwork and that 50 people in the world can really make a huge difference. We're also a team that put the first lithium down onto a plastic, which is very risky because lithium is very volatile. It burns quickly in water, as lots of people with Teslas now know. It's not a cut on Tesla, it's just that's the reality of the technology.
Hmm.
But in the very beginning of lithium batteries, there's 50 to 100 people. In the very beginning of flip chips, there's 50 to 100 people that make a difference in developing a technology. right? So when you fast forward to this business in nonprofit world, where I found myself, right? You realize that innovations like that are important to bring at the forefront. So if you think about mental health as an industry, when the largest provider is 250 million in an entire state like California, which is the seventh largest economy in the world, you realize that's a very cottage industry. You are
Mm-hmm.
a fairly small group of revenue against the big funders. Big funders meaning insurance companies and the state itself and the feds through Medi-Cal. So you need to put your plate where you are in perspective to what's happening in the greater world, right? Well,
Mm-hmm.
mental health through COVID became a buzzword, right? Everybody was about mental health. How do you provide mental health? How do you get an agency like ours to be bigger? And that growth trajectory is very important because most of mental health is in dire need of more providers, right? So there's just not enough workforce, there's not enough funding, there's not enough understanding about it. And you found Amazon and Walmart and big CVS and a lot of huge players jump into the market to provide services in their brick and mortar or to put
Mm-hmm.
stuff online. You saw a lot of telehealth jump in. You see calm apps now, right? So if you're a brick and mortar provider in a relatively small geographic area and you're in the 30 to 40 million range, you know that you need to grow to 100 million to be relatively relevant, right?
Yeah.
And we've never done any external fundraising. So that means on a point and a half of margin to grow at that level is very hard. Your cash flow is going to have a problem, right? So
Mm-hmm.
we've been doing a lot of different things to figure out how to improve margin by cutting some costs. So that brings in the manufacturing chops in the background. But
Mm-hmm.
it's really about learning about process, making sure that everybody has a voice in the team. But it's applying some of those early process metrics that help you get there. It helps you think about the industry a little.
You're just a beast in what you do. I mean, you talk about growing and scaling. I just love it. But I know that there had to be some pressure, right? You did something that people would run away from. You've taken on a challenge when no one wanted to do it. What made you really stay when everyone was walking away and no one wanted to do it?
Um, Mission. I mean, it's about mission. So you asked me about the Israel trip. Um, my personal mission is a story of going to Israel and at Gideon Springs. Uh, our pastor said, we need you to bow your head and just the very first thing that you hear in you hear the voice of God, going to be the name you have, and you kind of have to be in Israel to understand that water doesn't move. So Gideon Springs has been there since biblical times.
Mm-hmm.
Um, And so, in the moment, when you're really understanding the value of that moment, my answer was what I heard was pure mother of many. And at that time, I was not married, I didn't have a child, I was single, and that really hit me hard. And I couldn't imagine why God was calling me that.
Mm-hmm.
That was in 1998, 99. And it really shook me and it really made me rethink my priorities and what am I spending my life doing? I'm spending my life in manufacturing and airbag tapes, for airbags was important. That was an important delivery. Early flip chip technology, that's important. I had a little piece of some of those technologies. But I think what's important is starting to work in the Africa ministry at my church and helping to fundraise for World Vision and doing a variety of things that would promote children's health and well-being became much more of center of who and what I did with my life. And so sort of this natural outcome over my life work, meeting my husband, having the same mission, teaching Sunday school, doing a whole variety of things that were children oriented,
Mm-hmm.
and then coming into this role where this board member asked me to take a consulting contract for these two agencies that were formed. I turned him down 3 times because I'm like, no, I'm a for-profit girl. I'm not a nonprofit person. It's too bureaucratic. But, it really changed the trajectory of my life and my husband's life. And so it really became a mission together. So God had a plan. He always does.
Was there moments where you just felt like this is enough. We're not going to be able to scale this. And if so, how did you even overcome those moments? Because a lot of times you're in it, and we all hit those places, right? Where we start to have a little bit of self-doubt. But how did you overcome that self-doubt in a place where you're trying to scale it to 50 million?
We still do. I still have that self
I love it.
because my end goal is 100 million. But if you don't have a little self doubt, I don't know who you are, but every day, I have to ask for guidance and help, and hopefully hopefully I'm listening correctly, and really leading with teams and listening to other people who say, you're on the right track. Getting good counselors and advisors around you that will tell you the truth. No, I wouldn't go that direction. That's not the right segment. And then having, really by God's grace, have people come around you that say, okay, I want you to help out on this committee, or would you help out with this? And eventually you become on the state board. And a lot of it's just listening to other people, looking for wisdom from others that have been around longer, who've done it longer, who have a reach and a trajectory that's different. And then I mix in some of the skills I've got along the way, and you put one foot in front of the other. 16.3 is a really important one. Commit your ways to the Lord, and He will direct your steps. So, and I think there's a lot to those principles. You really have to believe you're guided, and you really have to listen every day and listen to other people very, very carefully about what they're doing, where they're going.
Hey, real quick, if you're enjoying the podcast, we first want to say thank you. And we also just want to give you a little insight of what we're up to at Francis. Some don't even realize that we're working with organizations to help them use AI to create that real human communication experiences, whether that's actually supporting your families, those patients, or the entire community. We're actually creating tech that connects. Check it out, francis.ai. I want to go back to that line that you just mentioned from Israel, that moment where pure mother of many, which is very powerful. But what does that phrase mean to you now, all these years later now?
You're a work in progress. I don't know where that's going to go, but I would never have imagined having any part of helping so many kids and adults. There's no way. Beyond your comprehension, really.
Yeah, no,
And
I hear
beyond
you.
what my son's very strong, so I don't know what he'll do with his life, but you never know.
I mean, you're a great example, and I'm guessing you had great examples in your own life that, and maybe some that weren't great. I always look at life as we have sets of examples that we learn from. Not every one of them are good, but it's what do you do to not go down that path, or what do I do to be a better version of my past? And I think that to myself at all the time. Being a father, I think that was one of the biggest things. Is I didn't have dad. I don't know what that looked like, and I didn't grow up with my biological mom. So becoming a parent for the first time and starting to see like, wow, I'm breaking cycles here. Like this is crazy. My dad, even though he wasn't there, taught me on how to be a dad, because I knew just all I had to do was do the opposite. All I had to do was just be there. All I had to do was show up, give it a try. So a work in progress it is. I sit here the same and I ask myself, like, wow, how did I get here? Do you ask yourself those questions?
Yes.
Yeah. Right. And it's God. It's truly when I sit here and think about those moments. I was actually just working now with trying to create this article, and I'm not one that really likes to I tell my story like this, but not when it comes to like actually writing the story. But as I sit here and think about it, I'm like, wow, like I a lot of the things that I said as a young kid, that I said out there, God was listening, and it happened years down the line, and I go back, I'm like, man, I remember when I was a kid and I just said I wanted to give back. I didn't even know what a nonprofit was.
Yeah.
But here I am talking to nonprofit leaders. I run a nonprofit.
Yeah.
So yeah, we are definitely a work in progress. And I love that. I'm sorry that I brought that up and then it
Oh
got you to
no,
that
that's
point, but
okay.
it was good. It was good. If someone is listening right now, Ellen, and they're probably going through a deep loss themselves, but still wanting to lead. What would you actually say to them? What is that word of advice for someone that is kind of going through something that you went through and is wanting to still lead, give back, help others?
You know, whenever you feel bad or you feel down, that's always been sort of an MO, is to give back, to, volunteer, do something for somebody else, take them a meal, figure out a way to help others. It always makes you feel a little bit better because it's giving of yourself. When you give, you get things back that are unrealizable, which is, just that inner self awareness of that you can do something different beyond yourself. I think going through a very deep loss, right after I lost my husband, one of my dear friends was losing her husband to Alzheimer's. And I told her that if there was a way she could prepay her bills before his imminent death, to do that, because managing all of the finances is hard. And she did that, and she thanked me I don't know how many times, right? She had the wherewithal to do that. Yeah. But really working on doing what you can do that day and leaving the rest for the next day. Doing as much as you can, as intentionally as you can, and asking for guidance and help from others, and receiving help from others. Sometimes you have to learn to receive from others. And that's an important leadership skill too. You have to receive wisdom and understanding and learn from other people. You might have the final say in the chair, but you better be informed to keep the respect and to have alignment with your team. Not always agreement, but alignment. When you're going to go forward, you have to go forward as a true team. And so when you go through deep loss and grief, you have to find alignment with those around you to give you help and to get help in ways that are meaningful.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And you're very special in a way of your leadership. Last time you told me that while most organizations put the CEO at the top, you've actually flipped the pyramid. Right. Why did you go into that direction?
That was something Scott and I agreed on early on, but he made it more of a policy than anything else. I think it's really, and he lived at 100%. And that is that in a community-based nonprofit, the most important person is at the front line. The most important person is the clinician, or the person who's, giving the bus ticket, not giving the bus ticket, but also riding with the person on the bus to the shelter or wherever they need to go. And the least important person is a person sitting at the desk, right? Doing the finances, the paperwork, or the outreach. It doesn't mean that the CFO and the CEO and the COO or the CIO aren't important. We take away the barriers and we provide the money. We make sure the organization is running and we're in compliance with all the laws and all that good, happy stuff. But where the work actually gets done, where the impact's really felt, is on the front line.
Yeah.
And so it's always been a premise to equip the front line of our organization with the tools like, mobile devices that work brilliantly, or laptops, or, AI instruments where they can do a scribble and it can turn the scribble into a sentence. So they're spending less time doing the writing of notes, things like that. Enabling the front force is really a key element for us. And so therefore, the front line's the most important, and the pyramid is upside down.
I love it. No, I love it. And if we talk about the frontline worker at South Coast, what could they say today that would make you feel, yes, we're doing it right?
Hopefully they would have seen over the last 2 years we've increased their pay rates. Yes. We've improved their benefits. We've given them 410s or 980s so that they have more time with their families. That 3-day weekend every other week has really helped them a lot. And we did win a workplace award for Southern California. So, one of the U.S. News and World Report best places to work in the United States. So we won that for our region. So we did a lot of things to make sure that people are heard and they're seen and that they have a voice. And I think that pays off in a variety of ways. Most importantly, happy employees make happier people
Mhm.
as we touch them and help them and help them on their healing journey.
Whose idea was a 3-day weekend?
Um, well, we were looking for ways to improve the benefit package of our employees 3 years ago. And um, coming out of COVID, a lot of people didn't want to come back into the office. So we were looking for a way to, um, people were working long hours anyway.
Hmm.
So we said, well, why don't we honor that longer workday and figure out a way to put what we call 980s in place. So it's a 9-hour day. But on the every other week, you get an extra day, so you can have a long weekend. And people loved it. And that allowed us to figure out a way for clinicians to, if they wanted to do private practice, they then had an extra day to do private practice work. So they
That's
could
so
make
good.
a little more money and hustle on their side. So it worked out great.
Yeah. No, that's an amazing implementation. I think people need to follow that 3-day weekend. Listen, should be lining up at the door right now. Not a lot of people, even if it's one to, a month, that's enough.
Yeah, we've had a
I'll
lot of
definitely say.
people be very excited about it, and it's definitely helped in our retention and our ability to recruit. So,
I like it. You mentioned a little bit about AI. Most people think of AI in Silicon Valley, but you're using in the community mental health. What made you take that leap? Is it just knowing that you had to stay with the times? Because I'm speaking to nonprofits now that are making, 20, $30 million, but they say that they're still lacking on innovation and technology such as AI.
yeah.
What made you actually take that leap?
So one of the key things I learned when I came into the job was people hate paperwork. Clinicians don't come into the business of helping people to do a bunch of notes and reports. They come into the business to help people and talk to them and really try to heal them, try to give them the best care possible. And since we work with a very severe population, um, they're hearing about child abuse or they're hearing about suicidality or 9-year-olds that are homicidal. It really heavy conversations day after day, hour after hour, every day. And so we got a team together and we talked about what would be ways to reduce that paperwork. How could we use software in our electronic health records
Mhm.
to make check boxes instead of written open fields? One, it helps your data set, right? Because you're not
Mhm.
trying to read through long narratives. It also helps people not have to write a long narrative, which saves them some time. So we changed a lot of the paperwork. And then as Colleen came into place, we were able to really look at how to navigate that HR in a different way, where um, there are AI techniques where you can write something on your phone tablet, and then it can convert when you get to a Wi-Fi station, and those handwritings can be translated into the beginning of your note. So it starts to write your note. It doesn't write the note
Mhm.
for you. It starts to write the note because it understands what you've written. And that's been a
I
huge
love it.
time saver. So somebody's not waiting till the end of the day to start to write the note. They're writing it either collaboratively or they're writing it right after the session. That's particularly important in environments where you're outside playing with kids or you're doing physical activities to help them learn how to play and socialize, or in group homes or in an SRTP, which is our mental health 24/7 residential system, where you're talking and you're working with kids a lot. But if you can jot a couple notes, it's really awkward to have a laptop there, right? You're typing and
Mhm.
they know you're typing about you. But if they can just scribble a couple things and they keep doing what they're doing with the client, that really helps them later when they're trying to put the whole process together and they don't forget as much, right?
That's so good.
So
And,
doing a lot of things there, and it also helps because it spell checks and it looks for language. So it really speeds the checking of the note, the accuracy of the note up.
when you implemented that, you see less burnout and a different vibe in the team after implementing AI in that space. Did you get pushback?
You always get pushback. It took us 18 months, well, almost a year to put it in place, and we were about 70% acceptance now. Um, so we rolled it out little by little, team by team, and a lot of the teams just love it because it validates what they're working on. It helps with their spell checks. It gives them some confidence that they're doing it right. And the program that we have, the way we implemented it and the way the software developer did it, it's just fun. It says, yay, you did the right thing. Hey, no mistakes today. So keep it up. You've done it in a short period of time. So it's helped them reduce their paperwork, but it's also helped speed up the time of their paperwork, which is, if you talk to most clinicians, that's the bane of their existence. So it has helped in morale, but it's helped in a lot of variety of ways. Yeah.
I like that. And if you could think about AI tool that maybe could go on your website and really navigate communication through, let's say, the community or patients, whatever that may look like, what would you want to see? AI being so advanced now, what would you actually like to see on your website that could potentially help you and your staff, people in the
So
community?
maybe not on our website per se, because in our business, because we have such high acuity, there's a lot of talk now about website chat. But you can get into a lot of trouble with website chat if it's not clinically supervised. And there's
Mhm.
a variety of examples of that, sadly, where chatbots have just gone wrong with highly suicidal or manic folks.
Mhm.
However, we're really looking at a great tool um, for a clinically supervised chat that between sessions would have the person go through PHQ-9, GAD-7, different sort of assessments, and then
Mhm.
they go into the chat, and the chat has a 911 and has different security systems that flag the clinician if the person's chatting with the chatbot. But what it does is, let's say you had a session with Susie on Tuesday. On Wednesday, Susie's cat dies, and she pulls up the chatbot. She says she goes to the PHQ-9, the GAD-7. And her scores on depression go up, and her anxiety is higher, and she's chatting away. And you see that on your screen as the clinician. And it's not an immediate thing that you have to call Susie back or text her back. But when Susie comes back the next Tuesday, all that information is there for you. So that now you can say, hey Susie, I saw that your cat died. Um, let's talk about that. I see you chatted a lot on Wednesday night. Now, instead of spending 15 minutes to get to the core of the problem, you're already talking to her in the first minute or two of the session,
Mhm.
and you're getting to the things that are really deep and important over that week of life that she's lived. Um, so we're looking at tools like that are clinically monitored, that have safety protocols around them, again, to help the clinician get to the core of the healing issue sooner rather than later. Be like going to your doctor and trying to explain a year worth of symptoms in
Mhm.
a 20-minute visit. It's pretty hard to do unless you've done all your surveys and information ahead of time. Right?
That's good. No, definitely valuable. Um, we're actually coming to a closing, believe it or not. But I would ask, if someone's listening and they want to help, maybe they just feel too small. Maybe they feel like, they don't have the money to donate. What's one thing they can do today to actually be of assistance?
Um, you could go to our website, SCCS for the number 4 kids. There is a donate button there. Um,
Mhm.
we don't do a lot of external fundraising. It's just not our thing. We live off what we make.
Mhm.
We prefer to pour that money that you use for chicken dinners into the kids. Uh,
Mhm.
but the way they can help really is by listening to the people around them. Listen to people. Share a smile. If you see someone that's really downtrodden, just ask them how it's going and mean it. Have a cup of coffee with a neighbor. If you see someone in church just sitting by themselves, go sit with them or ask them to lunch. Sometimes it's just reaching out a little bit.
Mhm. Making someone feel seen, heard. Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Do you
I
want the
agree.
others, right?
Yeah, 100%, Ellen, 100%. So we're to the point where we have a blind question, and this other leader that I spoke to earlier this week, he had a whole like rules of what it looked like for a leader after spending 30 plus years in the nonprofit world. A former lawyer went into the nonprofit world after having his own practice and loved every bit of it. And he says the reason I did it was because I was happy and never seemed like work. So his blind question was exactly that. Are you happy? And if you are, what actually makes you happy these days?
Well, Wow, that's a great question. Um, am I happy? Yes, I'm happy. Um, yes, happiness is one thing, joyful is another. So I'm joyful and I'm happy. Um, and a lot of joy and happiness comes from taking a walk with my dog, giving my son a hug, enjoying the beautiful weather, talking to my parents, uh, seeing someone be healed, listening to stories of transformation. All those things are
Mhm.
joyful, happy things. Yeah.
Yeah. And it all starts with you, right? It's the work that you put in. It's the conversations you're willing to have. It's getting uncomfortable at times, the walk with your dog, right? Like I speak to people sometimes that are not happy, but will still stay in the dark places, but happiness, it takes action, right? It just doesn't fall down. You have to do things to make you happy. And that sometimes surrounding yourself with good people, as you mentioned, it could just be a walk outside. I had another leader that says, I just go planting. I love plants. So he goes in his garden,
Yeah.
whatever that may look like for someone. Like, you have to find your happiness. You have to find your why. We all go through things because we are human. And that's, I always tell people life is like a roller coaster. And you tell me somebody that's not on this roller coaster, then I'm like, are you really living? Right? Because that's just what life brings us,
Yeah.
is the ups and the downs. But I ask you now, we had the blind question from the last leader. What is your question to the next leader that we actually interview here on the Hart Hustle?
Mm. Yeah, that's a hard one.
Got to put you on the spot.
Yeah, what's maybe it'd be how do you connect with God every day?
Oh, come on now. Yes, Ellen. How do you connect with God every day? That is a good question. I got to go back to these because I never write them down. So I got to go always back to the interviews and look back at what it is. And when I hear it, I'm like, ooh, that was so good. So I can only imagine that when I go back to this interview, Ellen, to refer you, I'm like, that was good. Because you know what? Believe it or not, Ellen, I have a lot of leaders that come to me and speak here, and faith in God is behind a lot of their leadership, journey. And some will say, hey, but I'm not going to talk about it. And I'm like, no, let's talk about it. So I love that you said that, because this is a platform that you can talk about whatever it is, which there's faith in God. It's such a crazy thing. I actually listened to this leader, and he says he wants that with his organization because he wants people to show up their true selves. How do organizations say don't bring your faith base into it, but you want them to be themselves and come as themselves? And I was like, you're right, right? You got 3-day weekends. We have organizations where talk about whoever it is that you believe, and get to know each other. My neighbor across the street, he's Catholic, but and I would say that I'm Christian, but it doesn't make any difference. We're both humans. Our beliefs may be a little bit different, but I'm willing to hear from him. He does. I don't look at him any different. So I love to have the conversation. So good question, Ellen.
Yeah.
That
Well,
was a really
it's
good
your
question.
superpower, right?
Yeah, it is.
God is always the one that's giving you the energy to do it every day. So
100%. Well, you kind of gave us the website a little bit, but if someone wanted to know more about the organization, know more about Ellen, what website, what social media platforms they can they visit?
really, it would be SCCS, the number 4, kids, KIDS.org. That's our website. We're going actually through a new website. We'll launch it probably in the next week or so. So that's pretty exciting.
That
Um,
is.
that's probably the best way to reach us. So
Love it. Any social media, Instagram, Facebook, that they can connect with you on?
a little bit, we're getting better at it.
Getting better. Okay.
But we're still, we tried it, we pulled back. Sometimes it's resources, sometimes it's just I
That's a
don't
whole
have.
nother job.
I'm a marketing person, right? So that's kind of me in the early hours and late nights. But we're training. There's a couple people in the organization that are trying to learn and do some more of that. So
I love it.
yeah,
Well, Ellen, thank you so much for the conversation. Thank you for really pouring into our leaders and for those listeners, because truly, I believe that every time we have a conversation, or I have a conversation with another leader, there is so much to be poured into others. And I hope that you guys are actually receiving it. And how you guys can support here at the Hart Hustle Podcast is just share, like, and comment. We want to hear more of these stories. We want to see more leaders be more vocal, more vulnerable, just like Ellen was today. We thank you. And if you're still here watching, share this with another friend. We can't wait to see you guys on the next episode. My name's Ephraim. This has been Ellen. We'll see you guys on the next Hart Hustle Podcast.